My name is Eric Square. I'm with the web analytics agency here in Toronto called Data Habits. I don't have a slide. There we go. Someone much smarter than me many years ago said that one of the key components of a digital strategy is answering two questions. The first is, what will bring supporters to your website? And what will bring them back? As I say, I can't remember. I've conveniently forgotten who said that, and it was many years ago. So if it was you, let me know afterwards. But that's really stuck in my head for a really long time, and that was probably so long ago that social media wasn't even necessarily fully up and going. And so I kind of revisit this question all the time, like, is this still true? Is it all about bringing people to your website, specifically supporters, and is it all about bringing them back? So I'm still in the camp that these are really important questions to answer. And these 4 free tools that we're looking at today, I think, inform your digital strategy. Yes, they're tools and tactics, but they have a strategic purpose. And so this is, maybe that illustrated. If your website, your Engaging Networks website, I assume you have one if you're here at the conference today. If your website is in the middle, these are the ways that people are coming to your website. They're coming from organic social. They're coming from search, display ads, search ads, or social ads. And then in the bottom there, they're coming from email. I'm missing one, which would be incoming links from other websites, but I would maybe call that organic search as well. So this is kind of the model that we're looking at if we have an Engaging Networks website. What brings people to our site for the first time, particularly supporters? We're not really worried about people who are not interested at any point in supporting us. What brings supporters to our website? And then what brings them back to end up donating in large part? I mean, a few of you may be not seeking donations, but that's a very small number. So either donating or joining your advocacy cause. So that's kind of this illustrated, and these 4 tools fit into this dynamic. And these free tools are Google Analytics, Google Search Console, Looker Studio, and finally, a Visual Website Optimizer. So I have how many more minutes to zip through these? All right, here we go. Let's start with Google Analytics. It's a web-based tool that records anonymously visits to your website or mobile app. It's code you place on every page of your site, then adjust to track specific behaviors. The newest version relies on machine learning and AI to report on visitors it's unable to track. Quick hands up, how many people have been using Google Analytics on their site? Yeah, I'd say the majority, yeah? Okay, great. So none of this is particularly new. It's a web-based tool, widely used, been around for many, many years. Gives you basic metrics on who's coming or how people are coming to your site. I like to think that it shows you what's working and what's not with your website and online marketing. So this would be, a report. What is bringing conversions to, what is bringing visits that convert? So in this particular case, 48% are paid search, then there's organic search, et cetera. There's lots of different ways, actually not that many different ways to get this information, but Google Analytics is probably the longest running and most widely adopted for answering that question. That's kind of why most of you put up your hands when I asked if you were using it. So that's probably the key value of Google Analytics. The second is it shows what brings visitors to your site, what they did while they were there, and what brought them back to your site. So again, this is Google Analytics 4 data, what brings visitors to the site for the first time, and then what brings them back to the site. There's lots of different iterations of this. You can see user flows through your website, et cetera, et cetera. But it's essentially a very flexible tool for answering those questions. What brought people to the site? What did they do once they got there? There's 3 main steps to this, to using it. Is putting the proper tracking code on every single page. So what the proper tracking code means, if you want to track button clicks or form submissions, you will probably have to make modifications to the code that's on every page. There's a free tool, probably many of you are aware of the existence of something called Google Tag Manager, which really speeds up this process of putting the right code, tracking code on every page. Last thing I'll say is Google Analytics will answer the questions that you set it up to answer. So out of the box, it'll give you a certain amount of data, but the real power comes when you intentionally figure out what questions about your users and their behavior do you want to answer, and create things like audiences. So, it's pretty straightforward to create an audience in Google Analytics of people who have come from your Engaging Networks email, and just see the behavior of people who are on your email list versus the behavior of people who have donated. So those kind of things, that's an example of putting the right tracking code and setting it up to answer the questions that are going to be most useful to you. I'll be quicker on the other bullet points. Setting up conversion tracking. So that is, when somebody does sign a petition, send a letter, make a donation, make sure that that is flagged in Google Analytics as a conversion, because the reporting becomes it gets to a different level at that point. Finally, adding UTM codes to your email, social posts, and ads. UTM codes, many of you might be aware, campaign tags in Google Analytics, that's telling Google Analytics where that visitor is coming from. Sometimes Google Analytics has no indication of what brought the person to the site. Specific, social platforms or email may not give Google a clue as to where that person is coming from. So that UTM codes, which Engaging Networks does quite well out of the box for email, it's an example of that 3rd main step. After that, you're kind of up and running with Google Analytics. Now, I probably don't need to tell you this if you've logged into Google Analytics recently. Google Analytics is a lot more powerful and it's a lot more complex than Google Universal Analytics, which is the version it has replaced. And let's see a show of hands. The first one is, who is as comfortable using Google Analytics 4, the newest version, as they were using Universal Analytics? All right, I'm going to give you the mic and you can finish the presentation here. Because I work in Google Analytics every day. It's a beast. So if you're feeling confused, you are absolutely not alone. It is far more powerful and complex than the version that it replaced. So don't be too afraid of it. I think there's 2 tips, and we'll get to at least one of them in an upcoming slide. But just know that you're not alone in sort of staring at some of the reports and saying, how can I just find the stuff that I used to be able to easily answer? There's a couple of answers to that. One of them is coming up in this presentation, and the other is Explorer reports. Really, that's the key. It's really hard to rely on the standard reports. They're actually, how do I put this diplomatically, they're crap. So the Explorer report is your friend. If you have particular answers, that's probably the place to start. What am I missing here? Yeah. All right. The other question is, how many of you folks have backed up your Google Universal Analytics, your data up until this time last year? Let me think. It's all a blur. Your old Google Universal Analytics are going away. You'll no longer have access to those at the start of next month. How many folks have done a quick backup of their data? Yeah, okay. I'm going to do a free webinar next week on those people who just want to squeak in under the radar, just how to do a really quick, basic, top-level view of some of your KPIs. So when people say, hey, what about back in 2020? You know, how much search engine traffic did we get back then? You'll be able to answer that. You're not going to be able to answer really granular week-to-week data or particular things, but you know, probably an hour's work will give you a bare bones archive of some of that historical data. So let's go. Last thing I think on Google Analytics is Google Analytics is not perfect. We all know that, you know, privacy things are changing. Google is, you know, using AI to fill in gaps for people it can't particularly track. So if you expect your Google Analytics data to line up perfectly with your engaging networks data, like you know how many donations you got and Google Analytics is not lining up perfectly, you're gonna drive yourself crazy. So you're looking at 85% accuracy is kind of where we draw the line. So it's not 100% perfect. What is it? Horseshoes and hand grenades. It's, you know, close is kind of what we expect. The next free tool is Google Search Console. And again, a web-based tool that shows how your website performs in Google search. And the second part is it gives very specific suggestions for improvement. So again, a show of hands, how many people are actively doing search engine optimization work on their website? Yeah? All right. Yeah, so, you know, 2 sessions ago, there was a lot of fear-mongering, which I kind of maybe agree with in terms of how much longer is search going to last. So it's a bit of a big caveat, but it's also, you know, search is an incredibly valuable source of traffic to most of our websites. And this is what Google Search Console does. And it shows how often your site is shown to searchers. So this is not, this is organic search. So these are not paid ads. This is just free impressions, free traffic. So for this particular website, you know, web searches over the last 6 months, 1.12 million clicks, 198 million impressions, average position of 7, which means they're, you know, they're more often than not on the front page, and 0.5% of those folks are clicking through. So you think about that, 200 million impressions in 6 months. If you move your click-through rate from 0.6 to 1.0, that's a fair amount of traffic. And so that's kind of why we do search engine optimization. And I have it later. I don't know if it's on this slide. I would say, and I'll say it again in a moment, Google Search Console is the single most valuable source of search information. It's not the only one. There's a lot of search engine optimization tools out there, but A, this is free, which is great. And there's a lot of information you can get from there. You can see down, yeah. So let me put it this way. If Google Analytics shows you what's happening on your website with people, you know, how people are interacting with your website and using your website, Google Search Console gives you context about how Google is treating your website. So it's showing it, you know, to 198 million people, and it gives you far more data than that. How are we doing for time? All right. It shows the search terms associated with your site. So this is that same site, you know, how many times how many people it's been shown to, the click-through rate for each of those terms, where you are on average in the search results. So this particular website does particularly well for the search term giraffe. It gives you this performance of specific pages, so how many people it's been shown to, what the click-through rate is, where you are in the position. There's 45 for me. That's my website, so do as I say, not as I do. So that can be super useful in terms of, hey, what content should we produce? What are the search terms associated with it? How are we doing? You know? Again, single best source of data for answering those questions, and it happens to be free. Second to last, it gives very specific, if super cryptic, suggestions for improvement. So it'll say, you know, Google likes your site, but fix these things. It's a lot of technical jargon, but worthwhile. It's like an honest friend telling you exactly what you need to do. Shave your ear hair and shower more. So yeah, cryptic suggestions for improvement, very detailed, very useful. Again, not many other, well, a lot of tools will do that, but this one is quite comprehensive. To get going on this, Google Search Console, essentially what you have to do is prove that you own the domain name. So you're adding, it takes 5 minutes for someone who knows how to do this, you're adding a bit of information to your domain name server, at which point Google will give you a web interface where you can get, again, single best source of Search Console data. It's not everything, but if you had only one source of search data, that would be it. There we go, I've said that several times. Best single source of data, and it's free. Now, Looker Studio follows these two because, again, their reporting interface, as you probably know if you use Google Analytics, it's not great. And I kind of feel that Google Analytics needs to be used with Looker Studio to be useful. Folks, you know, who really know what they're looking for and answering questions can do so in Google Analytics, but if you want to share the information with the rest of your organization, people who don't live, eat, and breathe Google Analytics, your best way to do that, I think, is with Looker Studio. Again, it's a free web-based dashboard tool. It's provided by Google, and it works really well with Google data, but it can use many, many different sources of data. Quick show of hands, how many people are actively using Looker Studio? Nice, okay, great. Here's an example, this using Google Analytics data. That's a lot cleaner than the analytics, Google Analytics default login. See how many, in a given time period, how many people have visited the site, what brought them there, what brought conversions, etc. The amount raised, how many signups in that period. And then there's that audience filter. So I talked earlier about Google Analytics defining audiences. You can see how audiences, different segments that you have defined are performing. So that's Looker Studio. As I say, I think it's the second, maybe I should have added a third step to setting up Google Analytics, which is create some Looker Studio dashboards. Similarly with Google Search Console, the data is in there. It really starts to make sense when you pull it into Looker Studio and start to drill down. This, for example, a different website, but really looking at keyword opportunities. This is a particular thing, but things that your website has been showing to a lot of people are shown your website for searches for these terms, but not many people are clicking through. So, the first search term is waterfall. 14,000 people shown it, but 0.01% are. You can use that information to go and review some of those pages and say, hey, Google thinks we have a lot of valid information. It's showing us to a lot of people. Nobody's clicking through. There's very concrete things that you can do to improve that. That's an example of Search Console and how Looker Studio can identify those opportunities. So again, it's a tool and a tactic, but it makes you a little more strategic, I would say, in your approach to some of your content creation. Last one, Twitter. It will always be named Twitter as far as I'm concerned. I wouldn't recommend pulling Twitter data into Looker Studio, but this slide is there to as proof of concept, it can be done. You can create a dashboard of Twitter data and do, calculate things like the engagement rate, the applause rate, all of those things within Looker Studio. Quite straightforward to do, if not easy. So 3 main steps: create a dashboard or copy a template. There's so many good templates out there to start with. You connect your data sources to the dashboard. So either Google Analytics, etc., Google Data Studio. And then you adjust and edit the widgets to display the data. So create a report that you can share with people, makes sense, change the names of some of the metrics if they're cryptic, etc. Those are probably the 3 main steps to get started. Yeah, I said this before, but it is the key tool for making sense of Google Analytics and Search Console data, and it's easier to share than many other, than these sources of data are naturally. So this is the third piece of those previous 2 tools. Final one is Visual Website Optimizer. It's a tool that replaces the free Google Optimize tool. And it offers you up to 50,000 free tests per month. So maybe one more quick show of hands. How many people used Google Optimize back in the day to run? Yeah, okay. That helps you optimize your key pages. So what we mean by that in a moment. Let me see. You can test different versions of website pages and features to ensure that your site is as effective as possible. So Google Optimize worked well with Google Analytics, and Google sunset it quite a while ago now. And Website Optimizer is one of the maybe more easy to use and effective tools. There's several different platforms that do this, but Visual Website Optimizer I've found to be maybe the most intuitive. The 2 types of tests that you can do are A/B tests, so experiment with various website versions, or split URL tests. And it does, yeah, I'll explain this in a moment. So these 2 types of tests to figure out, we have 2 different versions of a web page. Here's an actual test. You can probably guess which did a little bit better. One with an awkward headline and no image, slightly better headline and an image. And Visual Website Optimizer is sort of, say, maybe it's optimized for speed. It wants to reach a conclusion quickly, but this was the results of that. A conversion rate of 2.5% versus for the A version, and the B version had a 4% conversion rate. At this point, Visual Website Optimizer is pretty sure that the second version, version B, is going to win. So, it's a quick way to verify that the changes that you made to your key pages, petitions, donation pages, are going to convert at the highest rate possible. Some of you may notice, especially if you can read that number, a sample size of 557. It's a little dicey in terms of statistical significance, and they kind of admit that themselves. And so, from a data science perspective, you're going to want probably 5 times that at least. And they say as much in their model. They are looking to generate results relatively quickly. They assure us that they've done the background statistics to be as accurate as possible, but that's what it is. The other thing is the idea of they will show, you can see it right there, the winning version is shown to more people. So you're not spending a test. It automatically nudges towards the winning version, so that you're not giving up traffic. You're not showing a test version that isn't likely to win to as many people. It's a pretty standard feature on a lot of these testing, but that's what it has. Now, Visual Website Optimizer is by no means free, but you can do 50,000 tests a month for free of those A/B tests. So pretty free unless you have an enormous site and a fair amount of traffic. 3 main steps: create an account at vwo.com, place the code on all the pages that you want to test, and then create and run those tests. I would say you can also link it up to your Google Analytics, which will give you more information on those tests. I've got the 1-minute warning, so here we go. It helps you ensure that sign up, donation, and other key pages convert at the highest rate possible. So we've looked at 4 free tools. One of them you actually have to pay for if you used it too much: Google Analytics, Search Console, Looker Studio, and Visual Website Optimizer. Now, here's a big question that I'd love to lead off with the questions later is, if this was the model when I first heard about it, at least a dozen years ago, maybe more, from some mystery person, of, lots of things bring people to your website, but we all kind of acknowledge that email is probably the big one that brings them back to actually support us, either sign up or donate. I'd love to hear from people if this doesn't apply to you. If you're like, no, we get most of our return visits from TikTok. The vast majority of our donations come in from LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, put your hand up in the questions. Last thing, these tools are free, as in free kittens, not free beer. I think as Ram's presentation showed, there's lots of tools out there at different price points, but there's always a lot of work that goes into using these properly, understanding them, and getting the most out of them. They may cost monetarily, but in terms of time, it's not free. I sound like I'm against kittens or against free kittens. I'm by no means. I'm very pro kitten and very pro free kitten. So there you go. I think I'm at time. Questions, complaints, let me know.
All right. Well, we have nothing in the old Q&A right now, so it might just be an opportunity for folks to raise their hand, shout stuff out. I will repeat it so everyone can hear. If you have a question, let me know. But
yeah, who's seeing huge results from channels other than email in terms of direct donations that are rivaling the rate of your email list? This is the person I want to talk to. Yes. Yes. Okay. Yep. Are you strategically doing search? Like, are you? Yeah, the whole 9 yards. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So we do have a question, too, up there now. We have one person asking about the cookie apocalypse and wondering how that's going to affecting the things that you talked about today.
Yeah. So Google assures us that Analytics 4 is well prepared to deal without cookies. What this will primarily affect the cookieless world beyond Cookie Monster is display ads, remarketing, things like that. Google Analytics, they assure us that it'll muddle through. Maybe this segues into what was said in the presentation before last, which is search as a channel and as a hugely important one. Its days are likely numbered. So, that Google Search Console, maybe start using it now, but, it's anybody's guess. Is it 6 months? Is it 6 years until that 198 million impressions goes to 50? That wasn't the answer to the question, but the other one.
Yes. Yeah. So next question, are there any other data visualization tools you'd recommend?
For the work I do, Not really. This, there's Tableau, there's many others. They're all a learning curve. Excuse me. But for my purposes, for what I'm doing, Looker Studio is probably the most flexible, widely used. It's very open in terms of being able to pull in data. There's either a connector to bring in the data, which you can pay for, or you can create your own. So that kind of flexibility is pretty good.
We've got an IMIS Universal Analytics, but that's an interesting question. How do you feel about that move? Are there things that you miss from the older Google Analytics?
Yeah, I think just being able to answer questions really, really quickly. I mean, really what the shift is a number of things, but Universal Analytics was designed to track web pages, right? That's what it was designed to do. Google Analytics 4 is designed to track the internet, which is now, it's not just web pages, it's mobile apps, it's virtual reality. So there's a lot going on. It's a framework that is incredibly flexible and complex. So as I say, you could track interactions in virtual reality. It's kind of ready to do that. You can pull in if you have a mobile app and a website, you can mesh the two together and see a much better sense of your supporters' interactions with your digital properties. So that's a nice thing. And it was created by data scientists who expect you to really know how to set it up, how to get the answers out of it. It's no longer presenting you upfront with basic metrics. I'm bad-mouthing it a little bit. It still tells you how many people come to your website, how many pages they viewed, but some of the most useful questions are not necessarily there. That's a long one.
And can I ask, do you ever help folks diagnose, let's say they're seeing some discrepancy they don't understand between what they're getting from their analytics and what they're seeing in, say, Engaging Networks reporting? What kind of steps do you take to investigate those?
Yeah, that's a good one. So that idea of 85% accuracy, the key thing is to test that your data is being sent to Google Analytics in the proper way, that there's no technical problems. That's what we're kind of, that's our first step when you see these major discrepancies, especially if they change over time. In some instances, a web page is just missing tracking code. Well, that's going to cause a major discrepancy. And then after that, it's probably your attribution model, and that would probably be the biggest second one. So, for instance, is one of your models set to attribute the conversion to the last click that brought the person to the website? So probably email, maybe ads, et cetera, et cetera. Or is it showing you a range of how that person got to the site over time, or the first time they visited the site? You can configure Google Analytics, for instance, to show you those three things. What brought them to the site the first time, on average, what brought them to the site, and then what brought them to the last. So those would maybe be the two things there, is the technical setup, make sure that's solid, and then make sure that you are comparing apples to apples. The attribution is the same.
I think I'm going to bring that to a couple folks.
There you
have
go.
In mind there. So question, how do we keep our historical data after the 14 to 18 months? GA4 will keep the data.
Yes. Okay, so this is a really common misconception. Your data doesn't just disappear after 14 to 18 months. It's specific subsets of the data. So it's, for instance, you'll still know how many visitors came to your website, how many pages they visited. What is going away after 14 months is very specific, user-specific data. How do I describe this well? And maybe the quick way to get around that is to export your data into BigQuery, which sounds simple, it's one sentence, but it's a whole other level of complexity. But the way to do that is to, it's a database program, cloud database that Google provides, and that will give you your full data in perpetuity as long as you pay the hosting fees, which are quite reasonable. But don't freak out that past 14 months, your Google Analytics data just disappears. Some of the more granular reports definitely disappear, and those are ones that are based on individual users.
All right. Well, Eric,
Yeah.
I think that's our time, and I want to thank you very much for that. I've got some takeaways there, so
Right.
let's have a round of applause for Eric Schroeder.